The joke slipped out of my mouth on an ordinary afternoon, the kind of careless sentence you toss into the air and forget before it lands. It was said under a bright sky, sunlight pouring through the cafe windows, dust floating like tiny stars, my life feeling stable enough that I didn't think words could change it. But some words don't fall to the ground. Some words wait. And when they return, they don't knock, they shake the door of your entire life. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and small moments that change everything, take a second right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel Bright Acts. Stories like this remind us that even casual kindness can become destiny. I had met her weeks earlier, not in a dramatic way, but in the quiet rhythm of everyday life. Her name was Mirela, and she worked at the small printing shop across from my office. I noticed her first because of how carefully she moved, like someone who had learned to be invisible in crowded places. She had tired eyes that didn't match her age and a softness in her expression that made you want to slow down. We spoke only in brief moments, daylight conversations about paper sizes, deadlines, and the weather. Nothing personal. Nothing deep. Yet something about her stayed with me long after I crossed the street back to my building. My life, at that time, was tidy and contained. I lived alone in a modest apartment filled with light, routine, and silence. I worked long hours, paid my bills, and kept my emotions in neat boxes. I told myself I liked it that way. People came and went, but I didn't let them stay. It was easier to keep distance than to risk disappointment. Mirela, without trying, began to disturb that comfort simply by existing near it. That afternoon, we shared a laugh over a small mistake in an order. The sun was high, the street noisy, and for a brief moment, life felt lighter than usual. I noticed how she laughed with her hand half covering her mouth, as if she were afraid of taking up too much space. Without thinking, trying to sound casual, trying to be funny, I made the comment. I framed it as a joke, a passing line, the kind of thing people say and forget. I saw her smile freeze for just a second, then soften again. She nodded, laughed quietly, and we went back to our lives. I forgot about it completely. That night, the city slept under a pale moon, and I slept without dreams, unaware that a seed had been planted in someone else's heart. Unaware that my careless humor had landed in a place where hope was scarce and desperation was heavy. Unaware that words can sound like lifelines when you are drowning quietly. The next day arrived bright and ordinary. Morning sunlight filled my apartment, and I went through my routine without a second thought. When I opened my door to leave for work, she was standing there in the hallway. Not dramatic. Not crying. Just standing, holding a small bag, eyes steady but fragile. Daylight poured through the stairwell windows, illuminating the fine tremble in her hands. That was when she asked if my offer was still good. Time slowed in that moment. The joke echoed back to me with a weight I had never intended. I realized, all at once, that for her, it hadn't been a joke. It had been a door cracked open. And she had spent the entire night deciding whether she was brave enough to step through it. I invited her inside, mostly because I didn't know what else to do. The apartment looked the same as always, clean, quiet, safe, but suddenly it felt different, as if it were being tested. She explained, not with tears or drama, but with careful words and long pauses. Her rental room was no longer available. Her savings were gone. She had no family nearby and no one to call without feeling like a burden. She hadn't come expecting comfort. She had come expecting an answer. Fear sat heavy in my chest. I wasn't prepared to share my space, my routines, my life. I had made peace with being alone. Letting someone in meant unpredictability, compromise, vulnerability. But as daylight stretched across the floor between us, I saw the exhaustion she carried, the kind that comes from surviving quietly for too long. I realized that doing nothing would be a choice too, and one I would have to live with. She moved in that afternoon. The days that followed were awkward and careful. We existed around each other like strangers learning the shape of the same room. We crossed paths in the kitchen under bright morning light, shared space without shared history. I noticed how she woke early and sat by the window, sunlight on her face, as if she needed proof that the world still moved forward. I noticed how little she ate at first, how she folded her clothes with military precision, how she apologized for things that weren't wrong. Slowly, the apartment changed. Not physically, but emotionally. The silence softened. The air felt warmer. We began sharing simple routines, coffee in the morning, brief check-ins during the day, quiet evenings where the city's noise filtered in through open windows. She found extra work. I learned pieces of her story without forcing them. Loss, instability, years of standing on ground that kept shifting. She had learned to expect nothing and be grateful for scraps of kindness. The challenge wasn't just her struggle. It was mine. I struggled with the fear of attachment, with the voice in my head warning me not to get used to her presence. I told myself this was temporary. I told myself I was just helping. But the truth was, I began to care in ways that unsettled me. I cared whether she slept well. I cared when she smiled more easily. I cared when she came home tired but hopeful. And caring meant risk. One afternoon, weeks later, sunlight flooding the living room, I realized how much she had changed, and how much I had too. She laughed more freely now. She walked with less caution. She had started leaving small signs of herself around the apartment, not as an invasion, but as a quiet claim to safety. A book on the table. A plant by the window. Proof that she believed she would still be there tomorrow. But life doesn't allow peace without testing it. Her job hours were cut. Money became tight again. I saw the old fear return to her eyes, the reflex to disappear before becoming a problem. She offered to leave, framing it as responsibility, but I knew it was fear. The apartment felt too bright that day, the sunlight almost cruel. I realized that the joke I once made had become something real, something fragile, something worth protecting. We faced the uncertainty together, not dramatically, but steadily. I adjusted my budget. She took on temporary work. We learned how to communicate without promises we couldn't guarantee. And in that shared struggle, something deeper formed. Not romance born of fantasy, but connection built on daylight honesty, on choosing to stay even when it was inconvenient. Months passed. Seasons shifted. The city changed its colors outside our windows. What started as an impulsive act of kindness became a shared life shaped by mutual respect. I learned that offering space can also create it inside yourself. She learned that accepting help doesn't make you weak. We both learned that sometimes the safest place isn't where you plan to be, but where someone lets you land. If this story is reaching you, if it's reminding you of moments where kindness changed your path or someone else's, please take a moment to engage with this video. Like it, share it, and let others feel this too. Your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Before the ending, I have a special request for you. Comment below and tell us about a time when a small act of kindness changed your life or restored your faith in people. Your words might become someone else's hope. The day she finally moved into her own place, the sun was high and gentle, just like the day this all began. There were no tears, no dramatic goodbyes. Just gratitude, warmth, and the understanding that what we had shared mattered. The apartment felt quieter again, but not empty. It was filled with the echo of something good. I learned that jokes can become lifelines, that words carry more weight than we realize, and that opening your door, even accidentally, can open your heart. And sometimes, the most meaningful chapters of our lives begin not with intention, but with kindness offered in daylight, never expecting it to come back changed. If this story touched your heart, please don't scroll away. Like, comment, share, and subscribe to Bright Acts. Your engagement keeps these stories alive, and your kindness keeps the world turning, one open door at a time.